Welcome to the Worth Knowing live stream on my Substack, Worth Knowing with Matt Robeson. And we're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, and of course on YouTube, where you can join in both portrait and landscape format, which is important these days because every piece of video has an optimal way to watch it. Short clips are great for portrait. Long shows are great for landscape. And the Melania movie is great for having your eyes and ears plugged while you're waiting for your lawyer to show up and spring you from an ICE detention facility, which is really the only place that movie is going to be shown after this week. And even that might be a violation of the Geneva Conventions. But look, I'm tired. I'm downright tired of warping every last thing we talk about around Donald Trump and ICE and corruption and bribes and the Trump's physical state, which in Donald's case involves creeping dementia and extreme mental illness. And in Melania's case involves a horrifying syndrome called Trumpification, where she's actually beginning to look like her husband. Researchers are still hoping for a cure. But like anyone addicted to a noxious substance, all of this Trump may be slowly draining the life out of me, but it's also not a great idea to go total cold turkey either. The withdrawal could be deadly, or to be a little bit more serious about it, we can't quite afford to ignore all of these things either when you've got a totally corrupt president earning $10 billion for his family business and sending his director of national intelligence on FBI raids of election offices in pursuit of his insane fantasy conspiracy and sicking a paramilitary militia on American citizens and threatening war against our allies while prices keep spiraling up out of control because of his illegal tariffs that he put in place based on advice from someone who doesn't understand basic economics. That's a true story, by the way. You can't just ignore all of that either. So today, I want to do a little bit of both things. I want to give the focus to the president's corruption and insanity and lawlessness that it deserves, but I don't want to just get stuck there either. I'd like to talk about some policy ideas. I'd even like to think a little bit more broadly about what we can do to get out of this deeply sick and broken point, this absolute pit of political putrescence that we've thrown ourselves into. So to do that, to get our dose of Trump and wean ourselves onto healthier mental terrain, really pleased to welcome back our political methadone of the day, my former longtime colleague from our Capitol Hill staff days together, an economic policy expert, the author of Poverty for Profit, How Corporations Get Rich Off of America's Poor, and currently serving as a senior editor at Washington Monthly, and Kim.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm excellent. It's great to see you back. And I should give the disclaimer up front that while you are a senior editor at Washington Monthly, you are appearing to us as yourself. These are your opinions only. It's like Miss Cleo. It's like, this is for entertainment purposes only. Do not take your horoscope suggestions seriously as like advice or anything. Okay. All right. So we thought when we were talking about this before we went live that we would do a little fun gimmick here today where each of us would bring our top 5 stories worth knowing. See what we did there? Nice pun. That we had both written up or been part of investigating in your work at Washington Monthly or in my work at Newsweek and on the Worth Knowing Substack. And we would go back and forth and see if we could get a little bit of Trump, which inevitably we will, and a little bit of policy, and a little bit of sorting out our giant political mess that we've made in America, and see if we can overall just get some fresh ideas rolling. So I think we should start off on the most burning issue facing America. What can we do to rein in the horrifying threat that has invaded our communities and inflicted so much damage on Americans? I'm speaking, of course, of the Melania movie.
You threw me on that one.
Yeah, well, that was my goal. My problem is that you're smarter than me. I've known this for 2 decades now, so I've got to sneak up on you. Can we stop the Melania movie? It's like, it's not doing great, but like still, I mean, can it be banned?
Well, I mean, so it did outperform expectations, and that was a very low bar, right? So it got $7 million, which made it the most watched documentary in however long, which is kind of sad. We should all be watching documentaries, just not this one. I'm pretty convinced, though, that a large part of that audience was probably paid to be there by Republican clubs that are having watch parties for that kind of thing, because the reviews have been absolutely savage. And, both of us have been collecting our favorites. So, Matt, if you want to start with your favorite, and I'll share my favorite review.
Um, I, I, you go first. I just want to point out that I love shouting out what people are saying in the chat. I love interacting with people. First of all, it confirms that we are live. Second of all, it confirms that we're not AI bots. Third of all, it's just hilarious. Pussyfoot Production 775 says, "You are our white savior." Is that me or you? I'm not sure. Is it maybe Melania? I'm not sure. What was your favorite Melania review?
Okay.
What
Well, I do want
review
to point
did
out.
you like best? Yeah. You go
Yeah, yeah,
first.
yeah. So I do want to point out that the Melania movie currently has a 6% Rotten Tomatoes at the moment
Oh,
and one
nice.
star on Letterboxd if you look at either of those. Now, the only positive review I saw on Rotten Tomatoes was from the Epic Times, which we all know is kind of a front for whatever. Oh, hey, Jim. Thank you. We appreciate the welcome back. Um, so the best review on Letterboxd is the one that has like 8,000 likes. If they showed this on a plane, people would still walk out. And I thought that.
Ditto for a submarine. Yes, and Cynthia Rice has it. The melanoma movie is a money laundering opportunity. Everything is a money laundering opportunity if you're Donald Trump. All right.
Yeah, yeah. Just as a reminder, $40 million to get the rights for the movie. 28 million of it which went to Melania directly. $35 million marketing budget. And the fact that they only got $7 million in box office sales off of $30 million in marketing tells you that it's been a hard sell to get this movie off the ground. Why? Here's another great review. This is William Thomas from Empire Magazine. An obsequious, ring-kissing portrait of the current U.S. administration, dressed in gauche, glossy reality TV clothing, and yet somehow still better than Rush Hour 3.
I saw a great interview. Like, I think it was like Maria Bartiromo or something, one of these. I can't tell the difference between different Fox News people. Like, I didn't know that Laura Ingraham and who's the other one? There's another blonde one there. I can't tell them apart. Anyway, they're interviewing Melania and they tried to give her a softball, like, is it true that there's an original score for this movie? And where did it come from? And she says, yes, it came from people writing new music for movie. And it's like, oh gosh, oh honey, why?
Yeah.
Anyway, I really did. By the way, I meant we can move on. We can move on to serious stuff. I
We'll come
really
back to
did
Melania.
mean to before we move off Melania to put this up on the screen, but it was too much to handle all at once. When I was talking about Trumpification, this is oh no. That's the thumbnail for today. I really did mean to put up this comparison photo that I specifically created for today's live stream. I mean, it's happening. Like, if you look at photos of her, she really is beginning to look like Donald. It is disturbing. I, ugh,
It's the glower. It's the glower. I think that's what it is,
it's
you know?
something. It's something. All right. Let's be serious for a second. I did actually put up the thumbnail for today, which was meant to be intriguing, but it's meant to be real as well. You are actually an expert on this topic. Joking aside, you wrote an entire book about this, about poverty for profit. This is you. This is your book right here. How corporations get rich off America's poor. I know policy books are not like, automatic bestsellers. This was great. This was so interesting, and you
Yeah.
do it in storytelling, and you kind of it's very like Michael Lewis-esque. You look at these individual stories of how these giant multi-billion-dollar corporations get rich by kind of suckling at the federal government and taking advantage of programs that are intended to help people who are poor. And you are starting to take a look, and I don't think that this is out, so maybe you can just give us a little preview teaser. You're starting to look at the question of what are the companies that are getting rich off of ICE's authoritarian crackdown? What have you found out so far?
Yeah, so I'm not the only one looking at this. There's actually been some, great investigations already by folks at the Brennan Center, the Marshall Project, ProPublica. One thing to keep in mind here is that before all of this, the ICE budget 10 years ago was only about $10 billion. Now, the One Big Beautiful Bill added $75 billion to the budget for immigrant detention and tracking and immigration examination. That's a huge amount of money, and the government can't do all that by itself. So, of course, what's going to do? It's going to subcontract for all of it. So we've got a total of $85 billion being dispersed over the next 4 years that are going to a whole stream of companies, some established and public, and a whole bunch of shady new players on the scene that want to grab a bit of that ICE money. And that's what I've been looking at. Now, actually, any one of us can do this research because there's a fabulous site that the government hasn't managed to take down yet. It's called usaspending.gov, and it allows you to search federal contracts. And you can actually go in there yourself and see all of the contracts that ICE has and DHS have awarded in 2025 and 2026. And I think you'll be pretty surprised by both the amount of money that's been dispersed, but also the lack of information about who these people are. So let me give you one quick example. Um, Many of you may have heard early this month about the man who was killed at a Texas detention facility. This was a 55-year-old man, a Cuban immigrant named Geraldo Lunas Campos. And his death was actually ruled a homicide by asphyxiation. But one of the facts that was in this case reported by the AP was that this particular facility was built according to a $1.2 billion contract that was awarded to a company called Acquisition Logistics LLC. Okay. This company has no website. The registered address is a house in suburban Virginia that's owned by a 77-year-old retired Navy flight officer. That's it. That's all we know. You can try to Google them. You have no idea. But somehow that guy has a $1.2 billion contract to build a detention facility in Texas. And that's just one of lots of examples of this kind of contracting, subcontracting, profiteering that's happening with zero accountability for all this money.
I don't want to step on your forthcoming work on this. And so I'm not going to like put you to the question of, and by the way, MJ, it's just, I know this is a little trollish from MJ, but it's just so funny. I just had to put it up on the screen, but I'm not going to repeat it out loud. I'm not going to put you to the question of really going through all of your emerging research on this, but I would love to see. This is not the kind of situation like with the Jimmy Kimmel cancellation, attempted cancellation, strong arming from the FCC, where we could do perhaps a mass protest, a mass boycott, for example, of these companies, because it's not like they're making consumer products, but there should be tools from our elected representatives through the appropriations process. We're seeing Democrats actually leveraging the appropriations process right now to put pressure on reining in ICE. They can do the same thing when it comes to awarding federal contracts. They can actually put prohibitions in place. You will not give money to these companies. I would love to see the translation of your investigation go right into congressional action on blacklisting these companies. If you're profiting off of Donald Trump's authoritarian crackdown on America through ICE, you should be absolutely blacklisted. That is my 2 cents. I'm not sure that's your intended use case for your work, but that's what I would like to see.
Well, I mean, transparency even would be a start. We don't even have to go as far as blacklisting. People have a right to make a living, right? But you at least have to, if you're using taxpayer dollars, tell people how much you're getting. What are you doing with this money? Who are you? So as an example, there's another company called Metro IBR that I found. They got a $30 million contract for, quote, immigration examination fees. Now, if you go look up Metro IBR, you will not find a single picture of a CEO. There's no listing of their staff. You don't even know where they're located. They have these AI generated stock images on their website. Who are these people? And that's true for a lot of these little tiny contractors that are getting 30 million here, 20 million there. Or in the case of some of these public companies like Geo Group and Core Civic, who are the two largest prison companies in America, literally billions of dollars in contracts. And I have to, on this transparency point, Remember, Donald Trump wants to allow public companies not to have to report quarterly. So the consequence of that for a company like Geo Group or CoreCivic is that they can operate basically in secret also. And that shouldn't be allowed either.
Wow. I want to do two things. One, usaspending.gov, before the Trump administration realizes and takes it down. Um, like you're an expert at this. You do this professionally, and so I, I trust us in your hands. But I also urge people, do your own research. Right now in the chats, there are an awful lot of people having, let's just say, colorful and heated conversations, including a lot of pro-Trump people and pro-Trump bots and pro-Trump trolls and etc., which is fine. If you, as always, the rule here is if you're pro-Trump, great, you're welcome. Make your comments, make your case, make an argument. I'm all for it. Like, I'll pop it up on the screen. I'm not going to put straight up trolling on the screen unless it's hilarious, like the Dark Magician 123 looking at the two of us and saying, Asians teaming up with whites again. I see. Yes, that is the magic combination that always works 100% of the time. Asians and whites.
Thanks,
You
whoever you
actually
are.
once accused me offline of secretly being an Asian lady. And that is possible. So this might not be an Asians and whites teaming up situation. I'm just saying. But back to the point. I do want to encourage people, look this up for yourself. The more of this kind of deep dive work and exposure that we can get, the better. I think you are going to have an absolute blockbuster here with this look you're doing. I want to get to the bottom of who is getting even that like $30 million contract. $30 million is a lot of fucking money. That is a lot of money to do. What was it? Processing bullshit. What is it going for? What are they making
Immigration
this money for?
examination fees, And look,
Immigration
even if you are a
examination
Trump
fees.
supporter, that $30 million is going to this mystery company where the CEO is invisible to you. You want to know if that money is actually doing what you're paying your taxpayer dollars to do. It behooves all of us, whatever side of the aisle you're on, to make sure that this money is going toward what Congress wanted it to go toward.
Well, and again, I'm shamelessly plugging your book here, but
I appreciate
this
it.
is exactly what you did in your book. You actually went and said, like, well, we're spending $1 billion. I'll pick on, I don't know, Maximus here. Like, we're spending $1 billion here on this company. What are they doing with that money? What are we getting for it? Are we getting good value for it? Are we getting, in the case that you're outlining here, anything for it? Like, what are they actually doing with it? And I'll tell you right here and now, I'm going to commit to sending a little transcript here to our previous guest, Jamie Raskin, on the Oversight Committee. And I'm going to say, like, look, man, very first thing you do when we take back the House in the fall, I want a deep dive on where the fuck all this money is going. All right. We've neglected our gimmick. So that was our number one. That's something you're working on. We still got like 9 more of these things.
I know, at this rate, we won't be able to get to them all. And it's your turn now.
Oh, it's my turn. All
It
right. Well, then,
is.
so wait, you're asking me.
Yeah, I'm asking
Okay.
you about your top thing worth knowing from this week.
Oh, from this week. Oh, I gotta choose. I gotta like call my own play here.
Well, let's go to the big one then. Let's go to the big one about politics, right? And what it's going to take for the Democratic Party if it wants to regain power.
Okay. All right. That's a good one. So I wrote an article back in, this is a great segue because it's going to allow us to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I want to turn it back to you and a fascinating interview that you just did. So this is great. So I wrote an article back in November called "Do Democrats Still Have to Moderate to Win?" And it's on worthknowing.substack.com. It's a deep dive. It is what I specifically set out to do was to test my priors, to question, I have my own predilections politically. But I come from kind of a different training set. You and I worked in politics, in campaigns on Capitol Hill at a time where being a moderate in certain districts was demonstrably the right thing. It was
Mhm.
essential. It was the only way to survive. And I exclusively, as a legislative director and chief of staff and campaign manager, I only worked in swing districts my entire career. I only worked in very marginal districts that were extremely tough for Democrats to win and hold on to. And so that was my experience at the time. But I'm not sure that that's still right. So what I looked at was three questions. How much does being a moderate help a candidate to win elections? And the answer is surprisingly not that much anymore, not as much as it used to. That's what the data says. Then, second, okay, then is the whole Democratic Party brand a problem? And are there ways to fix that? And the answer there turns out to be yes, the Democratic Party brand is a problem. And yes, there are options for fixing it. And one of those options is to try moderating the brand. And then finally, I looked at that question. Would it work? If we focused on moderating the Democratic brand, what would that look like and would it work? And the answer I reached there was yes, there's compelling evidence that it would. And it doesn't mean we have to continue a civil war between moderates and progressives. Now, okay, that's my setup here. The reason I think this is relevant right now is that in the last week, we've seen a turn in polling data that's really profound. Trump and Republicans absolutely cratering, not just on the measures of
Mhm.
issues that matter most to voters, economic issues, kitchen table issues, affordability, but also on traditional sources of strength, immigration, even border control, which remains their top issue. And yet, while Democrats are ahead on the generic ballot, it's not like we're crushing Republicans right now. We're still at a place
Right.
where we should be absolutely lapping these idiots, and we're not. And the question is why? And I think it comes back to brand, and that's where I'm going to turn it around to you. This will be number 3 because you just did a fascinating interview with strategist Simon Bazelon. Am I pronouncing Simon's
Yeah,
last name
Baseline.
correctly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bazelon. Um, this is on Washington Monthly. The title is "Tough Medicine for Democrats: Too Liberal and Out of Touch." Walk me through what you found out in talking to Simon.
Yeah, so Simon works for Welcome Pack, and they did a lot of testing of the Democratic brand. And probably the most important number that they came out of there was that 70% of Americans think that Democrats are out of touch and too liberal. And in fact, the Democratic brand is worse on that measure than Republicans are, as far as people think that Republicans are too extreme, for instance. So, and the perception of Democrats as too liberal has increased over time as well, which means that our branding problems are getting worse and worse. Now, Simon agrees with you, Matt, and I highly recommend that everyone read your piece, by the way. The deep dive was amazing. It was
Thank
completely
you.
well researched, well written, and you were fair. That's the other thing. I mean, you're a moderate, but you were fair, you were pragmatic. So, highly recommend that everybody take a look at this piece and weigh in too. But Simon's definition of moderate is, I'm not sure that you and I would agree with it. That moderate means popular with the public. And
Mm,
so, yeah, so it's a really interesting definition that was very poll driven. So one of the things that they found was that Democrats were perceived to be too concerned about issues that don't have relevance to ordinary Americans. So for instance, on DEI being a classic example of that, right? Or being overly concerned with race or poverty or gender, things like that, when people really, really, really care about affordability. I think he has a point that Democrats need to talk more about affordability and the things that would help make life more affordable. I'm not sure that I agree with him that moderate means popular, because some positions that are popular right now are not great positions for the for democracy or the money of the country.
yeah, it's an
Mm.
absolutely fascinating exchange that you have with him on this point. And I really do commend the article to everyone. Again, the title, it's on Washington Monthly, "Tough Medicine for Democrats: Too Liberal and Out of Touch." And the exchange you have is on this point of, well, just to push back, isn't it a bit of a problem if you're saying, well, To moderate means you might have to change your position on a core issue of principle, like abortion or how we treat immigrants. And I think what he's trying to say here, it's an interesting argument, and I'm going to leave it to people to kind of judge for themselves. But I think what he's trying to say is, well, you don't have to give up your principles, but we are a representative democracy. So if we're arguing that the other side is violating democracy, but we're not listening to what voters actually want, then we're going to have problems. And we ourselves are guilty of at least some of not being democratic. And I think he's trying to argue that you don't have to abrogate your own principles, but you do have to at least find. I mean, that's the definition of moderating: is you have to find um, ways to meet people where they are. You don't have to find middle
Hmm.
ground with deplorable racists, but like there are certain principles you cannot break. But if people are saying, no, I really want border security, I really want the flow of people who are undocumented to stop. You have to listen to that. You have to get right with the public on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fundamental conflict here between leadership and representation. I guess it doesn't have to be a conflict, but there is some tension here between what it means to lead and to represent. And that, I think, is the tension that kind of surfaces in this polling. Um, do you want to lead but have an unpopular point of view, or do you have a popular point of view that may not be good for some of the constituents that you may have in your district, particularly if they are transgender or if they're minorities? What is our obligation morally to stand up for those who don't have a voice when popular opinion is pushing you in the other direction? And that seems to be one of the big questions that the party is wrestling with, but each of us maybe individually as
I,
well.
well, and I we can move on because we still have. What are we on? We've done like three at
Oh
this
boy,
point.
we
We
have
have
like another, right.
we have a bunch more to do. I will close this out by saying that I alluded earlier to the ongoing civil war that's been occurring. I mean, it was going on when we were on Capitol Hill together, right? Between
Oh yeah.
progressives, at the time they were called liberals, but progressives and centrists, right? And we saw it in Steny Hoyer versus Nancy Pelosi, and I mean we've seen it basically from time immemorial in this party. Um, I do think Simon has a point though, in that there is a brand problem. I think we can agree on that. There
Mhm,
is a brand
mhm.
problem, and it's the chart that I showed before of increasing numbers of voters just see the Democratic Party as being out of touch and too liberal, and that's why we're not making greater headway against a demonstrably authoritarian, obnoxiously, outrageously corrupt Republican Party under Donald Trump. And you can see it. I'll splash up this graph from your article. You can see it in there is a brand problem with a perception of Democrats as being too liberal. Now, look, for people who are in the chats who consider themselves progressive, who like the squad, like the Progressive Caucus, I am not here to shit on other Democrats. Believe me, I'm I am all for it. The only way we win is by all being in this together, right? I'm not trying to fire shots. I'm just saying that there is a brand problem here that's being fueled by putting out progressive slogans and policies that are landing with voters and that they think renders the Democratic Party as out of touch. So we need to figure out a better way to communicate what we're about, and we may need to consider some compromises on some of these positions.
Yeah, Matt, actually, that's a great segue into one of your ideas that I'd love for you to talk about, which is how Democrats handle this question of immigration, right? So we're beginning to see sort of resurgence of the earlier messaging about abolishing ICE, uh, but that may not be the best message to help with this brand problem that you've just surfaced. And you wrote a column about a better way to talk about it for Democrats to talk about immigration, but also not lose this fight on or lose the ground that Democrats are actually gaining on this issue, right?
Yeah, that's right. A few weeks ago, I wrote an article on Worth Knowing called Can Anything Be Done to Rein in This Violent Authoritarian ICE? Oh, I can even look at me. I'm so modern. I can splash it up on the screen. Look at that. Boom. I did that in real time, folks. Yeah. Okay.
I'm
Crane shoulder.
impressed.
Pat myself on the back. And look, there are parts of it that changed almost immediately. And I did a couple of shows with our old friend Ryan McConaughey about this, the fact that over the course of a week, some of the politics of this changed really fast. I had advised in that article, let's not try to use the Homeland Security appropriations lever. It won't work. It's not where Americans are at politically, and it's not going to turn off the spigot of money, the $75 billion in the one big beautiful bill that you alluded to earlier. It's going to do nothing. Things radically changed after the murder of Alex Preddy. And I think on that point, I'm happy that Democrats have kind of drawn a line there, and it's worked out. They've threaded that needle so far pretty well. But the rest of my larger point, I do think continues to stand, which is we've seen it demonstrated pretty clearly that moving all the way to a defund ICE, abolish ICE position will backfire. It will boomerang on us. And far harder for Republicans to fend off is a laser-focused position that could actually work on reining them in. Body cameras, which Kristi Noem just agreed to. She just said all ICE agents are going to have to wear body cameras. Now, they'll probably take like 12 years to roll that out, and they'll mysteriously be turned off every time, like they're out of doors. But still, that is one thing we are pushing for. Taking the masks off, clear identification, operating only with warrants. Fucking Eric Schmidt, which is actually his legal title. He's a U.S. Senator, believe it or not, a Republican, actually called Democrats' positions on these things insane. I would like to see him defend that point. How is it insane that you can't have, armed to the teeth shock troops breaking into people's homes without warrants? What about legal warrants? We fought a war of independence over this. You might remember it, right? Ken Burns made a whole documentary about this. So I'm pretty sure this is real. Warrants are important to America. It's right in the Constitution. So I'm not sure how that's insane. That's where I'd like to focus in. And there's been some momentum, some developments in recent days around one of the other ideas that I put in that article, which is I think we can do a lot more at the state level. I think states empowering themselves to go after these out of control agents legally. That's a real thing that can really put sand in the gears. And in fact, I'll splash it up on the screen. There was a legal analysis in the New York Times. Where is it? Here it is. There was a legal analysis over the weekend in the New York Times about a 1987 law review article that showed that actually states can, under the Constitution, pass laws to allow citizens to sue rogue federal agents civilly and hold them liable for illegal actions. And that seems like a powerful tool to incentivize these people to put a little bit of fear in them. So that was my whole thing is let's be focused and smart about this.
Yeah. And I would add to the point about the state legislation. There was another op-ed in New York Times by the Dean of Berkeley Law School, Erwin Chemerinsky, who, by the way, was the author of the textbook for federal courts jurisdiction that I had in law school. So I revere the man. But he made an interesting point that there is no federal civil liability against federal officers either. And that could change with what he called the Renee Good Civil Rights Act. So very, very briefly, right, the Civil Rights Act of 1871 created a private cause of action where you can sue state and local officers civilly for violations of constitutional law. And that was the date, 1871. That was when the federal government was the good guys and some of the states were the bad guys. So that's why they created that cause of action. But weirdly, there's a hole where federal officers cannot be sued in civil court for constitutional violations. So the officers who went after Renee Good or Alex Preddy cannot be sued in federal court. That can change if Congress passes a law allowing civil actions to happen. And that seems to be a pretty reasonable and pretty easy lift if Congress set their mind to it. So I would add that to your list.
Right. And, look, we're Democrats. I deny that Trump derangement syndrome is a thing. The MAGA mind virus is a thing. One thing the Democrats are prone to, however, is we are obsessed with the federal level. We focus way too much
That is
on
true.
Congress, on the Senate, on the presidency. They're unquestionably important, but there's so much power that's wielded at the state and local level. And, you see a bill in Maryland right now that would ban people who have worked for ICE under Donald Trump from getting state or local police jobs in the state. Will it pass? Will it stand up to legal review? Not sure. But I would argue that passing more of these laws, look, we know that the Trump administration is targeting blue states anyway, right? So the contrapositive of that is these are the places that have the power to pass state laws. And let's test it out. Let's try laws that give incentives that and a little bit of a scare to these people for breaking the law, for violating people's civil rights, for shooting them. And we have the power at the state level to do it. So let's do it. All right. We have successfully gone through. I'm going to give you one. Let's go back to the theme. Let's go back to the theme of trying to fix. You pushed me on. Well, what about Democrats moderating? What about that to kind of overcome, the MAGA insanity? You took a look at a broader fix to try to, break us out of this like insane partisan logjam we're in. You want to talk about, this is so nerdy, but I kind of like it. You want to talk about at-large districts. What does that mean? At-large districts.
Now, everybody actually is familiar with an at-large council member or an at-large school board member, right? So council members, they represent little swaths of the city or a little part of the school district, but the at-large member represents the entire district or the entire city. So let's take the same idea to members of Congress. And there's nothing in the Constitution that forbids that. The benefit of that is that instead of gerrymandering these little districts where somebody like Chip Roy or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Paul Gosar gets elected and extremes and represents fairly extreme views, people like that would have to run in the entire state. And in some purple states like Arizona actually and Georgia, where Gosar and Greene are from, it actually would be much more difficult for candidates like that to win. So the idea here would be to convert one or more of the districts that are in play right now and turn it into an at-large seat, kind of like a Senate seat in a way, but in the House. And if you look at senators also have become a little bit more polarized over time, but in general, they are more moderate than the typical Freedom Caucus member, for instance. So that's one idea, just to depolarize the body politic and make it more representative of the people who actually live in these states, because a lot of members Congress does not actually represent the ideological makeup of the country. And I throw this out there as an alternative to some of the more complicated schemes out there to depolarize Congress. There are others like ranked choice voting, multi-member districts. There was one that you mentioned in one of your columns, Matt, that was also equally complicated. It seemed a little bit hard for people to figure out exactly how that would work. But at large is kind of simple because we already
Oh,
have.
what's it called? You're talking about the alternative to ranked choice voting?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the fact that that
Yeah.
neither of us can think of it right now tells you that maybe
Well,
that'd be too complicated a
it's got a
solution for this,
tagline.
right?
I actually think it's simpler than ranked choice voting, which is one of the things that I think it's called. The idea is instead of ranked choice voting or our current first past the poll voting system, right? Which is like the first one to get to 50% plus one wins, right? That's our current system. Ranked choice voting says you rank all your candidates and then the lowest person below 15% gets eliminated and their votes are reapportioned in the order of the rank that people gave. And you need a PhD to be able to understand it. And I think it's only going to, my concern with ranked choice voting, while it's better, it's clearly better. I think it's so impenetrable that it will cause people to have less trust in the voting system. The name of the system that you're thinking of that just came back to my mind, I filibustered, see, is approval voting. It's very simple.
Right.
Approval voting. And under this system, if Matt is running, and Anne is running, and Cynthia is running, and MJ is running, okay, you just say yes for everyone you approve of. I approve of Anne. I approve of Cynthia. I approve of MJ. I left the middle finger out. I'm not going to vote for Matt, right? And now the person with the most yeses wins. You achieve more or less the same results mathematically, just trust the math on this, that you do with ranked choice voting, but it's really simple. Everyone that you're cool with, you say yes to. Everyone you're not cool with, you don't. And it eliminates the spoilers. It eliminates, like, I'm cool with Cynthia. See, Cynthia wins. I'm cool with, so let's say we're back in the, I don't know, the 2020 primary, right? I'm cool with Pete Buttigieg. I'm cool with Joe Biden. I'm cool with Warren. I'm cool with Bernie. And that's it. I'm cool with those four. Any of them are fine. And then the one with the most yeses wins. I like that one, but I think I like the at-large better.
I think it's simpler to understand, and I think it's less prone to gamesmanship, because look what happened. Whatever you may think of Mamdani, there was an interesting outcome from ranked choice voting in New York,
It's
right?
interesting.
Because
That's a very
yes,
good euphemism. Yeah.
there was a coalition of folks, right, who used the ranked choice voting system to
Right.
propel their own to the top and get rid of the moderate person. And the proponents of ranked choice voting had initially argued that this system would actually result in more moderate candidates and more moderate politicians, but that kind of didn't happen in that instance.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
right.
Well, what would be really interesting would be a combination of at-large districts and approval voting,
Mhm.
or choice voting, because then, what I think would be revealed is that most Americans are not that ideological. And this was a new piece from G. Elliott Morris. I have to get him on the show and ask him, first of all, do you like to be called G? Like, what up, G? Is that what he, or does he want to just be called Elliott? I'm not clear. This is, people want to know. A new piece from him showing that independents are basically non-ideological. And it really goes to a point that I actually published in Washington Monthly. I wrote a piece for you guys. Oh, this is coming up on 2 years ago, where I said that the most underappreciated fact in American politics is how little attention people pay. People are following all of what's going on a little bit sometimes, and they're getting dribs and drabs. And that's why my favorite statistic that I've oft cited is Kamala Harris won among people who told pollsters that they pay some or a lot of attention to the news by 6 percentage points. Donald Trump won among people who say they pay little or no attention to the news by 19 points. And that's the whole story of what's happening
Yeah.
right now. And it goes back to this perception in your Simon Bazelon interview that Democrats are too liberal and out of touch. It doesn't matter if deep down we say, no, we're not. Like, we don't believe, the defund ICE, like open borders stuff, whatever it is. Yeah, that's not really what we believe. It's like, it's a few people. Okay, I hear you. You're right. I agree with that. That's true. But that's not what people are getting. What people are getting, and we need an equal and opposite force to rebrand the party, and that's the biggest thing. Anyway, I leapt from multi-member districts back to that, but all right, I want to throw one at you. Or is it your turn or my turn? I can't keep track.
Oh, I've lost track too.
Let me throw one at you. What about freaking super PACs? There was a whole bunch of this in
Mm.
these days because the biggest super PACs, like the biggest fundraising figures, are coming out of there's an AI super PAC, there's a crypto super PAC, there's a Trump super PAC. There's something like $375 million sitting in
Right.
this constellation of evil incorporated super PACs, that are all like crypto and dirty money and in bed with MAGA, and it's really bad. So you have done some work on this, and Larry Lessig at Harvard has done a ton of work. He's a former guest on this show. What have you been working on in terms of getting rid of these fucking super PACs?
Yeah, so actually, all the work that I did was talk to Larry Lessig, who has a really cool strategy, actually, that I think may actually win in front of the Supreme Court to regulate super PACs. And if Larry's been on your show, he's probably talked about this to you as well, but just for the benefit of those who are new
Yes,
to
he
this,
explained it to me, but it's a teeny tiny bit complicated. So you should explain it because you'll explain it better.
well, so campaign and finance advocates have long believed that the way to get rid of super PACs is to overturn Citizens United. Now, that was a Supreme Court case that ruled that, corporations can spend however much money they want and it's protected speech. Now, the distinction that Larry and his group have come up with is that expenditures are one thing, but contributions are something different. So it was not Citizens United, but actually a DC Circuit Court of Appeals case called Speech Now that extended Citizens United and its prohibition on expenditures to contributions as well, and said, oh, well, Citizens United says you can't limit expenditures, therefore we can't limit contributions to super PACs either. But Larry argues that the reasoning was flawed. Now, Citizens United was based upon the premise that that expenditures by super PACs are not directly related to coordination with the candidate, i.e., corruption.
Right. So
Now, it
money is
is
speech. So you can spend whatever you want
whatever you want.
on political advocacy. That's
Mhm.
that's the core thing. But that's not the same as contributions.
That's not the same thing as contributions because now there's plenty of factual evidence that contributions are actually directly related to corruption. Case in point, Bob Menendez. He was actually indicted because of promises to do X, Y, and Z if people contributed to his super PAC. MAGA Inc., that $375 million right before the inauguration, I think, when Trump was talking about to oil executives, give me the money and I will do whatever for you. And he solicited the contributions to his super PAC, right? So there's plenty of factual um, evidence to back up to take down the DC Circuit's reasoning that corruption and contributions to super PACs are not related. Now, there is a case that is pending. There is a referendum in Maine to regulate super PAC contributions that was struck down by district court, and it is before the First Circuit Court of Appeals right now. And there's this constellation of amazing legal minds that are making this argument that the DC Circuit Court case in Speech Now is wrongly decided. And if the Supreme Court goes along with this reasoning, what we'll have is the ability to regulate contributions to super PACs without overturning Citizens United. The Supreme Court does not have to renege on its own precedent. It can just apply that precedent in a different way. And they've got a lot of conservative legal scholars who are on board with this, and it could really kill super PACs. Really, really hoping that this happens before 2028.
It would be amazing. It would be absolutely amazing. Now, I, as always, and I talked to Lessig a little bit about this. I mean, with anything, there are going to be unintended consequences. There are going to be things you can't foresee. There will be workarounds eventually, right? You pass
Sure.
any new tax law, some clever tax accountant's going to figure out, I've got a billionaire client. Like, he doesn't really have to pay the fucking tax, right? So, like, it's the same thing with this kind of regulation. They're going to find ways around it. But just throwing a huge mountain of sand in these gears would be absolutely amazing, and I commend it to people. I hope they'll check it out. It's interesting and important. All right. Whose turn is it? Your
It
turn.
is
You're
your
up.
turn.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it
my
is your
turn.
turn. No, it's your turn. Yeah. And let's see. So one of the things that I'm seeing in the comments, people are talking about, well, Democrats haven't offered anything that would help people's lives. But it's not like Republicans really have either. And you had a column very recently about the kind of BS-y healthcare plans, healthcare ideas that the Republicans have been offering. And you make the argument that these ideas will actually have a negative impact on affordability and a negative impact, very damaging impact actually on people's ability to afford healthcare. And in particular, the great healthcare plan with its ideas of cash to people to buy healthcare directly, you absolutely deride. And I'd love for you to explain why.
So, I do a show on Fridays, and I want to address several things. Since you made reference to the comments, I've noticed that the stream of comments has slowed down, and that happens to correlate with the fact that I haven't been putting as many of them up on the screen. Part of the reason for that is that there has been, as I alluded to earlier, a vibrant back and forth. You might call it a bit of a flame war between various sides. Some of the people on the MAGA side may or may not be real people. I know that the people on the non-MAGA side are real people because I interact with them. So that has been going on, and I've made the decision not to put that up on the screen because I just don't think the back and forth is super interesting up on the screen, even though I would like to say that I really, really, really appreciate it, because one of the things that this is doing is it's drawing in lots and lots of MAGAs. Even if they're bots, we're getting amazing viewership statistics out of this. And thank you. I really appreciate it. See, MJ says that's why she stays in this chat. No trolls. And Philip is getting us back to your point, which is I pay nothing for healthcare in Australia. That sounds amazing. What happened was the ACA subsidies that were passed as part of, it was a COVID workaround when people were really having difficulty affording the plans under the Affordable Care Act. And so we extended these enhanced subsidies to increase affordability. On Fridays, I do a show with a Republican called Political Rehab. We agree on the important things. We disagree very affably about a whole bunch of things. And we're trying to just detoxify the entire political climate. One of the things I do as part of that show every week is a segment that I call That's Bullshit, in which I take down a particular piece of bullshit. And when these ACA subsidies were expiring, and we had this whole government shutdown over it and a whole fight over, will we extend them? And the Democrats said, if we don't extend them, we're shutting down the government. We did, and we raised the salience of the issue. The Republicans tried to muddy the waters by saying, okay, what we'll do is we'll give $1,000 to individuals and $1,500 to couples, and they can put it in a health savings account, and that'll be great. This reminds me of your brilliant, wonderful takedown of Trump accounts that you did earlier last year. It was just such a great point-by-point destruction from an economic expert standpoint of why these were insane bullshit. I should do it. That's bullshit featuring you talking about this. But oh, and Mimi wants to know, where are all these troll comments? Well, they've disappeared now. I don't know. The trolls, they got booted out by Cynthia, or they retreated under a bridge. I'm not sure, Mimi. But what I tried to do in this piece and in this segment, and the piece is called, what I call this piece anyway. It's up
I
on
think you
Worth
might have
Knowing.
called it BS on healthcare or something like that, right?
Yeah, what did I say? I said Republicans' alternative healthcare plan is just empty bullshit or something like that. Anyway, you can find it on worthknowing.substack.com. But the moral of the story is it doesn't come close. It doesn't come even close to meeting the costs that people who need these subsidies face. It is a horrible deal. And it's such a cynically raw deal from Republicans because they know this. They can do math. They so they're offering a little pile of cash, like a little teeny pile. Ooh, look,
Mhm.
cash. Sign away, sell your birthright for this mess of cash, and it'll all be fine. And people should not be suckered in by it. And it's so transparent. And it's because they know deep down that there really is no substitute for this. We made a decision over 100 years ago in this country that health insurance would be a business. Per the commenter a moment ago, the Australian, by the way, there's nothing I like better. My wife is perfect in every way, in every single way, except it would be awesome if she had an Australian accent. I really dig Australian accents. So our friend Philip, 457, who's probably got an awesome accent, pays nothing for healthcare. But we decided in America that we were going to make health insurance a business. Okay, that's fine. We're going to make the entire health system a for-profit business. Fair enough. You cover a lot of this in your book, Poverty for Profit, which is available for sale on Amazon and all your finest retailers. I have to point that out. And you talk about dialysis centers. You talk about, the aspects of our healthcare system where corporations are making a ton of money off of poor people. And, one of the consequences of this decision is we need insurance. The whole reason we ended up with the Affordable Care Act is it was based on a conservative idea from the Heritage Foundation about how to fix health insurance markets. It was based on an idea that was advanced by Mitt Romney for Romney Care in Massachusetts about how to layer on top of this foundation of private health insurance, private corporate for-profit healthcare in America. We're not going to get rid of that whole system. We tried, what were the ads they ran in 1994 against Hillary's healthcare plan? Louise, what were they? What was that
Right.
couple?
Harry and Louise, right?
Harry and Louise,
At the
right?
table?
We tried all,
Yeah.
and it got crushed and it backfired. So we said, okay, fine. We're not going to go with Medicare for all. We'd like to change the whole system, but we're not going to do that. We're going to build on a foundation of the system we have, and we're going to try to subsidize it, make it affordable. We're going to mandate that health insurance companies have to cover some things. They can't drum you out for pre-existing conditions. They can't cap your insurance so that you go bankrupt for getting cancer. They can't do that. But in exchange, we're going to really heavily incentivize, almost force, but we're incentivizing because it's through tax policy. We're heavily incentivizing everyone in. So you won't be as profitable on people with cancer, but you're going to have a lot more customers, health insurance companies. So it's all going to work for you. But in order to make it work, we had to subsidize the system. And what Republicans are saying is, nah, fuck all that. Instead, we're going to give you a mess of pottage. We'll give you $1,000. Just go for that instead. And it is bullshit. That was the whole point of that article.
Yeah. Now, I mean, even for one fact shows it's bullshit. Even for people with insurance, out-of-pocket costs are over $4,000 a year. That's for people with insurance. The house
And more
$1,000
and
limit
more.
grand.
It depends on your right. It's absolutely, like, I ran all the numbers in there, for like different levels. And here's the real kicker. Here's the real kicker of all of this. I don't want to get so far in the policy weeds, but this is partly meant to detoxify ourselves from all the Trump shit. So here we go. I'm gonna give you a piece of policy. The really insidious thing about the Republican alternative here is that even if you have health insurance that you're paying for, it still hurts you. Even if you don't rely on the insurance subsidies, because the people who would take the alternative, who would take the little stack of cash, it's a cherry picking problem. They are the people who are likely to be younger, healthier, and more likely to say, well, I don't need this. I don't need the insurance. I don't need the subsidies. And when you remove healthier people from the pool, what happens? The remaining pool is on average older, like me, and sicker, hopefully not like me, right? And when people are older and sicker, overall, on average, the whole pool is more expensive. They're going to need more health care. They're going to need insurance companies to pay more. That means they need to raise premiums. So by offering this, it's undermining the entire health insurance market and fucking everyone else who relies on these health insurance markets. It is like a double whammy against everyone who's in health insurance marketplaces. And it is absolute bullshit. All right. Well, I have filibustered here. I want to, as we head toward the end here, I want to catch up to a few comments. First of all, Mimi, I say at the top of the show, we live stream every week, 2:00. I hope people will set it in their calendars. We're on all these platforms. We're on X. Well, we're on Twitter. Okay, forget that. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitch. We're on LinkedIn. We're on my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com. So if you want to get these live streams every week, if you want to be part of this, part of the vibrant conversation, hear these amazing guests like Ann Kim, I hope you'll subscribe. worthknowing.substack.com. That's the easiest way. But we're also on the Cliff's Edge channel, which is a YouTube channel that I helped our friend Cliff Schechter to build. I was a heavy contributor. I'm still a contributor there. Ann Kim was a part-time contributor there from time to time. So we're all tied into that channel. We live stream there, and we're able to do it so that we appear simultaneously in a landscape for people who like it that way, and in a portrait for people who are on phones. So and for some reason, the trolls like portrait. Trolls like this asshole, who I'm going to boot, who says, deport all Jews and immigrants. Let me say that I am a very calm, rational person who has no problem saying, hey, cold, 338. Fuck you. Anyway, and then we get, we get rational comments here, like questions, like legit policy questions, like, do people on welfare in America have to pay for doctors? And Cynthia says, I think it depends. And we could get into a deep dive on that, which we will do at another time. Okay. I am going to wrap it up here. My goodness gracious. All right. So first of all, I have to splash up again, Ann Kim. You can find her work. She's here representing herself and her own views, but you can find her work, including her forthcoming deep dive on all the companies making bank off of ICE, at Washington Monthly, where she is a senior editor. She's also the author of Poverty for Profit. And you still post sometimes on your Substack, Policy Fix.
I do. I need to get better about it, but I do occasionally.
Yeah, it's a dirty habit, but
It's hard.
it's hard to kick. Yeah, it's really, really
It's hard to keep
kick.
up.
Yeah. And I am Matt Robeson, my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com. You can see it right under my name. All right. And thank you so much for coming back. This is refreshing.
Thank you.
I really feel like we
Thank
didn't
you.
just fall into the Trump vortex. Like we covered a lot of ground.
No, we figured out some ways to get out of it, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I feel great. I feel amazing. Look, all of you out there, I hope you feel amazing. Even the bots and the trolls, not the guy who wants to boot me and my forebears out of America. And actually, Ann's as well. Not that guy.
Exactly.
He can go fuck himself. But for the rest of you, I hope you feel a little better. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. And we will see you next week. In the meantime, stay safe.